You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the interactive interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Yo, what is up? This is Robbie E, and you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Boom!
Interactive Wrestling Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line with me right now is a TNA Impact Wrestling superstar, the guy who's one step shy of the cycle, Robbie E. Mr. Robbie E., how you doing today, sir?
Wait, what does one step shy of the cycle mean?
Well, you won the X Division title, you won the Tag Team title, and I think you've not yet won the Grand Championship, so that's the new one that they brought out. But once then, you're you're a world title away from the Triangle Champion here.
Because the TV Championship was kind of equivalent to the Grand Champion, so we'll just kind of pretend, and that could be it. Yeah, I get
Is that how we're gonna play that one? We're gonna call that like the equivalent to the TV title?
Yeah. So all I need is world. That was short intro, and it like covered everything. That was really good. You didn't list them all. You just kind of hit it right on. That was awesome.
All right. Well, I've been doing this a while, and, I'm a Jersey guy, too, so we got that in common. I grew up in North Jersey, same as where you trained, very close to where you trained, as a matter of fact, and we have a mutual friend in Kevin Knight.
Word. Oh, yeah, I haven't spoken to him in years, but, yeah, that is where I trained, IWF.
All right. So I guess let's talk a little bit about 2017. Here we are, and we had Abyss on last week, and he promised big changes at Impact Wrestling, and gosh, those tapings sound like there was a lot of them. I guess my question is, how do you feel about the changes, and where do you fit in with them?
Well, the thing is, change is always good. So when a lot of people hear things and new faces and guys gone, and it's like, oh my God, like right away it's always into the negative. How is it going to be this with this? How is it going to be this with that? It's change. It's good. It gets people talking. It'll make it different. New people are in charge. So we got to start somewhere to start this place over to hashtag make Impact great again, and that's what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Fresh faces is a good thing, and it's time for some changes in TNA. Impact Wrestling now, no more TNA, and that's what you're going to get.
How do you feel about? I mean, you've been kind of like the you've been around a while. I mean, I was talking to my friend about the fact we were going to have you on. And he basically said the same thing. He said, gosh, he's probably one of the longer-lasting guys there. I know there's guys that have a little bit more time than you, like Abyss, like James Storm, but you're now one of the guys who've been there the longest, if you really think about it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? Time flies. It's been, I debuted in October 2010, so it's been almost 7 years since my on-television debut. And, Abyss, James Storm, I mean, Gail Kim was in and out.
Gail Kim was in and out, yeah.
She was there longer originally, Madison Rain, but there's only really a handful of referees, but it's crazy that Robbie E is a veteran in the Impact Wrestling.
Absolutely.
But I mean, dude, I've been through so much and so many different people in charge. Because I think there's always a place for a Robbie E. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm different than everyone else, and there should be all different kind of things in wrestling, and I find that no one is like me. And no one will ever be like me. And wrestling is you have to be confident inside and outside of the ring, and I'm confident enough to say that there's only one Robbie E.
I love that. Excellent. Well, I've been watching you for years, and it didn't dawn on me how long I've been watching you until I started doing research for the interview. And I remember the first time I saw you was way back when at the old ECW arena in 3PW. 3PW. Yes, sir.
Well, that was like my first, I'm on a DVD that you could buy in the music store in the mall, and like, oh my God, my name's on a DVD in there. That was like the first thing to help me get my name out there. And it's crazy because I didn't realize how big 3PW was, but still, you just brought it up. People in the UK a lot bring that up and say that they watched me years ago from that. So it's pretty wild because at the time I didn't know it actually branched out that far.
It did, and it had a lot to do with honestly, the owner, Jasmine St. Clair, she brings a little bit of clout with it, so with that.
Yeah.
I said clout, not clap. I'm kidding. She brought a little bit of, she brought that name to it, so it definitely had that appeal to outside, and they definitely pushed the that button.
Plus, I think at the time it was one of the first places that ran the ECW arena, which made it kind of before everyone started running there. It was like one of the first, so it was kind of like a big deal.
Yeah, and Todd Gordon was involved, and he was involved in the original ECW, so it kind of gave it a little bit of that ECW feel.
Yeah.
So how did the ECW arena, even back then, compare to what we now know as the Impact Zone down in Orlando?
Well, the ECW arena was a lot dirtier. You definitely wouldn't want to sit on the toilets in the ECW arena. I don't mind sitting on the toilet in the Impact Zone. Yeah, it was. Granted, of course, it's like all the cool things that had happened in that building, and when I first walked in, that was like my first outside show out of wrestling school, and I walked in the locker room, and it's like Sabu, Sandman, New Jack. I'm getting offered this and that, and I'm just like freaking like 19 years old, just like jaw dropping, like what is going on, like scared for my life. But it was definitely an experience. But yeah, I mean, obviously the building was filthy, but it was great. The fans were great. There was energy. There was something special about it. It made it cooler. It made it cooler that that you could see blood stains on the floor and that there's holes in the wall. You know what I mean? And it had a funny smell also.
Have you been back since the major renovations at all?
I have been back, and yeah, I mean, you're in there, and it's like you don't even. I mean, I guess you kind of know it's the same place, but you really don't. It's different,
All right. So let's jump into TNA. You mentioned that I know you did some Explosion stuff, but you jumped into TNA as Robbie E. And I heard you say in another interview that Simon Diamond, Pat Kenny, is the guy who kind of helped create the Robbie E. character. How so? How did that happen?
Well, I'll tell you the story. He didn't necessarily create it, but he just kind of helped it happen. I was there for a tryout match. Well, originally I might have not even been there for a tryout match. I was just there possibly for a tryout match, but a young, hungry guy. I've been doing it 10 years. I'm taking any opportunity I could, so when I get invited there, I go. And I'm sitting in catering, eating with Pat Kenny, Simon Diamond, who is my longtime friend who helped me train years ago and lives in the same area as me. He always took a liking to me, so we got on pretty well. So we were eating, and Vince Russo was walking by, and Pat Kenny said to Vince Russo, "Hey, Vince," like yelled to him, "you said you wanted to do a Jersey Shore character. This guy's from Jersey," and pointed to me. Just like that, made that joke. Vince stared at me and said, "You're from Jersey?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "Could you get a girl?" And I said, "Yep," even though I could if they ended up getting Cookie, but I don't know. I just said yes. And him and Pat talked like privately, and then they came back and they were like, "Spike your hair up tonight for a match. You're going to wrestle Bobby Fish, and we want to look at you as a Jersey Shore guy." So if Pat Kenny never made that joke as Vince Russo walked by, I maybe would have gotten that match, and I would have just been Rob Echoes. It would have been a really good match, and 99% nothing would have happened. Because they told me to spike the hair up, I had a few hours to become Robbie E. Now, luckily, I am from Jersey, so I knew what the deal is. I had watched the show, and, I mean, to be honest, at that time still, I think I was 25 or 6, I partied at all the clubs that Jersey Shore people did. I mean, that was kind of like my life anyway, so I knew how to act like that. So I spiked my hair up. Luckily, I was growing it out, and I fist pumped on my way to the ring, and after my entrance, Vince and Dixie sat in the audience to watch. They ended up saying that just after my entrance alone, they said, "Sign him to a contract." So we ended up having a great match. They said it was the best dark match in TNA history. We came through the back. They pulled me aside. They had me do a promo immediately. I nailed it, and they pulled me in a room and offered me a contract. It was all like surreal. It all happened within like an hour. It was crazy.
Absolutely. And it had to be a crazy ride for you to come from, we talked about 3PW and being excited to see your name just on a DVD, but then you were in national headlines when you did the storyline involving JWoww and the cast of the Jersey Shore show. I guess it had to be just a huge whirlwind for you to be involved in something so big so quick.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it all happened very quick. Debut was on, at the time they weren't always live. Our debut was on live TV on a Thursday. Saturday was a fan fest. Sunday was their biggest pay-per-view of the year, Bound for Glory in Daytona, which I was then on doing a run-in on Jay Lethal. And then that Monday, Tuesday, we were back for more TV in Orlando, where like they're having JWoww from MTV, which is the hottest show right now, on our show, and we're doing. So all of these things happened over like 5 days. So it was a lot being thrown at someone who's brand new to the company. You know what I mean? So it was all pretty surreal at the time. But I was also ready to take it on because, dude, I was wrestling for 10 years at the time. I was ready. Like, I wanted to make it. You know what I mean? I never gave up. A lot of people give up in wrestling, and it doesn't happen overnight, and they quit. And I hung in there, and I said, damn, I'm good enough to do something. And, you know, I was waiting for my time.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to quote a couple of interviews because I've done my research in the lead up to our interview. And in one of them, you said that Cookie, you used the term sinking ship, that she was a sinking ship in TNA. I was curious, what does that mean? What did that have to do with it?
I mean, and she knows it now. It is what it is. We have no beef now. She's cool. You know, I haven't talked to her in a long time, but it is what it is. But she just kind of, you know, and she'll tell you she didn't take her job seriously at the time. There's a time to party and there's a time for business, and hers was kind of just always party. And what she didn't realize is I was the leader of the show, and you know, I wasn't the leader of any show in Impact. I was given an opportunity, but out of me and her, I was the leader, and she didn't look at it like that. She thought she was in charge, and instead of wanting to work as a team to make it work, she kind of only cared about herself. And, you know, her being gone from the company, she only did to herself.
There you go. And I'm not trying to stir up old crap, so I don't want you to get text messages once this is posted.
No, there's nothing there. I mean, it's all, you know, it is what it is. Don't worry, she doesn't have my new phone number.
Okay, that might be for the best. So you then started teaming with Rob Terry, and I thought that was a great team. I don't know, you know, where it spawned from because you guys couldn't be more different, but man, he was a lot of fun, and I really was disappointed when I heard that he was no longer with Impact Wrestling a few years ago.
Yeah, well, the thing about it was that's when I started to realize they had faith in me. So, like, you know, no one knows me or Cookie. We're only there a short period of time, and she has an attitude and is late for stuff where she might get into trouble a little bit. I easily could have been looked at because I was with her and been gone also, but they kind of saw that I wasn't like that and that I knew what I was doing and I did head on my shoulders. So they kept me, but still nothing really for me. So, hey, they're not doing anything with Rob Terry. They're not doing anything with Robbie E. You guys both, your name is Rob. Let's throw you together. It was meant to be nothing. It was literally just, hey, we'll do this to kill a little time.
Yeah.
I am the one that came up with Big Rob and Bigger Rob. I came up with having a red velvet rope that we walked through. I came up with the list. I came up with our web show. I came up with us having matching sweaters, which, by the way, when I walked up to Rob Terry the first day and handed him a pink sweater, I wish you could see his face. I wish I took a picture of his face. I told him to wear this pink sweater. But, I mean, these were ideas that I came up with and made it into something that, in my opinion, I think it was different. It got really over, and no one ever had a bouncer before. They had bodyguards. No one ever had a red rope before. No one ever had the list before at the time. I mean, these were all new things, and I feel we made it pretty cool. You know, I think, you know, a lot more could have been done with it.
Absolutely, and that seems to be the story with some of the angles that you were involved with. That it seemed like there could have been a little bit more that was done with it. We'll get to where a lot was done with it, which is the bromance coming up in just a minute. But I hate to bring up exes. I don't like to do it, but I got to bring it up. I listened to an interview that Brooke Adams, who you actually ran to the ring with on a recent episode of Impact, which I thought was kind of cool. Was on an interview with Jim Ross, and she said that if you ever have a chance, never date somebody in the wrestling business because you both will fight for attention. And she was, of course, referring to you. I guess, would you agree that you guys just were seeking the same spotlight?
No, I mean, you can date someone in the wrestling business. If it can work, it can work. It's just, I mean, that had nothing to do with wrestling. We just didn't work as human beings. I mean, it is what it is. I don't want to say anything bad, so you know what I mean. It
just didn't work out. That's a good way.
It just didn't work out.
I'll tell you this much: one of the coolest things as an Impact fan, and I'm a TNA fan from the get-go. I was watching the Wednesday night pay-per-views when I didn't know anybody else who was actually spending the $10 a week to watch it. It was very cool for you guys to break the mainstream and be on The Amazing Race. What was the experience like being part of that national phenomenon show?
Dude, it it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience that most people don't get once in a lifetime. I mean, it's so surreal. It happened over a month of just you're traveling so many places. You're living out of a backpack. It was crazy, and everyone looked at us, even the other people on the show, like these two are super stupid, which we kind of are for what we were in. We were definitely the team that we should have been off very early, and somehow we made it to the finals. So I'm proud of how far the team made it. So I wish I would have ran the race with someone else. Of course I do. But I still think I was awesome on the show.
Awesome. Do you think TNA milked that for all it was worth? Do you think they could have gotten more mileage out of the fact that two of their big names were on a national show?
I mean, 1,000%. We were on CBS. We were on one of the biggest reality shows of all time currently. Not before I was in Impact, not after, but while I was on Impact. And granted, it was mentioned, but I mean, I don't write the show. It is what it is. I love it. I love our show, but I do think there could have been more,
All right. Now, I would say that even though maybe the most headlines you got was the Jersey Shore, you'd have to say that the most success you had was as part of the Bromance team with Jesse Goddard. And that was a great team. Obviously, it seems to have gone its separate ways in the year 2017 here. But how cool was it to be that guy again with another wrestler who was really coming into his own, and to see Jesse Goddard really, I think he's grown a lot since his time with you.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way about Rob. That's what I was saying is I think I like that TNA had faith in me to put me with a Rob and a Jesse who were both very new to the business. Even Rob, who was in TNA before me, he was still very new to wrestling and had to break out of his shell, and I think he did a lot when he was with me. And same with Jesse. It's kind of like a challenge. Jesse at the time was very green, and he'll tell you that. And I think by the end of the Bromance, he was just a totally different person. And by us becoming friends and hanging out in real life, it made him let loose more, and we just gelled together so good. And we were the first ever team, at halfway through when I ran the Amazing Race, we were the first ever team to be reality stars. There's been reality stars in wrestling before, but never a tag team of reality stars that were both on CBS on the same network. So that was a first, and I think that could have been mentioned more also. And, and then even after that, us having our own DJ. Who has ever had their own personal DJ before with introductions? And no one. We had our own DJ. Like, it was so many, between the thing with Rob and the Bromance thing, there was a lot of firsts.
There was a lot of cool things, yeah.
Bromance was a very, hey, it's a joke, Bromance, whatever, which is cool, but I think we made it way more than it was originally thought to be.
The only other DJ in wrestling that I can remember was the annoying guy that was on Nitro all the time, DJ Ram. Remember? Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, but he wasn't a wrestler or a manager. He was just kind of there.
He was there to he was trying to make an uncool show seem cool. Is what he was trying to do.
Yeah, right.
All right. So here we are, 2017. I keep saying that, but Impact Wrestling going through all these changes. You're kind of, it seems like you were maybe getting ready to do something with Mike Bennett. Maybe that didn't go as far as it could have gone because of his departure. So where do you see yourself fitting in the current TNA Impact Wrestling picture?
I don't know. Time will tell, but I am going to be fit into the equation somehow, and I'm looking forward to it. The future looks bright for myself. The future looks bright for Impact Wrestling. So I'm excited to see what it's going to be. And like always, whatever it is, I'm going to make the best of it because that's what Robbie E does. And, I'm 33 years old, but I still feel like I'm 23. No, I still actually feel like I'm 13. So I still have a lot to give. And, I still have a lot to give, and it's like a new me. And now that, I have baby twins and, whatever, I'm like,
Which, by the way, that's how I don't have any animosity at all about the fact that we had such a hard time sitting down together is because you have twins. I have two kids of my own, by no means twins. They're 8 years apart, but I don't have a lot of time on my hands either, so I understand completely how hectic that could get.
It has to be fit into a time when I'm driving. But, yeah, between twins and my schedule and my 5-pound chihuahua and my wife, yeah, there's a lot going on.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about the TNA TV title, and it's the equivalent of the Grand Championship. We saw Jesse Goddard as the Grand Champion. So do you see yourself maybe chasing that gold, or are you thinking higher up the card? Are you thinking that down the line you want to be TNA World Heavyweight Champion?
Jesse Goddard wasn't the Grand Champion.
Oh, I guess my notes are wrong.
He was wrestling. He was wrestling for it, but
he did wrestle it. Yeah, that's right. He did not win it. I remember. Moose won, I think. Yeah, you're right. Sorry about that.
Sorry, just had to throw that correction out there. But
don't
yeah,
worry.
dude,
it's not often I'm wrong, but when I am wrong, I want to be called on it. So I appreciate it.
I'm here to help.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. I would love to maybe get a new tag partner and be tag champs again. I would love to maybe go in the X division and be X again, grand champ, and I want to be world champ. It sounds intriguing to me. I'm ready to do everything. So again, I don't know what the future holds, but
yeah.
I would love any opportunity for a championship. Those are the best memories of my life, being a champion and fighting for championships.
Very cool. And you got Jeff Jarrett back, and it seems like you guys are kind of following in the mold that he was trying to create with that Global Force Wrestling, where now you guys have a working relationship, and I saw you tweeted this out a few weeks ago with Pro Wrestling Noah. And you guys, are starting to make working relationships with other promotions around the world. So even if there's maybe not right away something for Robbie E there, maybe there's going to be a chance for you to head overseas? Are you thinking that might be something you'd consider doing?
Also working with Crash in Mexico, and there's going to be some opportunities for me overseas for sure, and I'm looking forward to them. I'd love to go back to Japan and wrestle. I'd love to go back to Mexico and wrestle. I'm big. International stuff is super fun to me, so I love going out of the country. I go to the UK a lot. I do independence there. I just came back from Australia last week. I'm going to Israel in 2 or 3 weeks for the first time, which is super cool. I feel like I go to Chile every few months for these huge shows that I do in Chile. So I'm all over, man. I wrestle all over the world, and anywhere to go outside the United States is always a fun experience. So yeah.
Very cool. So I wanted to tell you this, and this was something that I wanted to say. Shortly after Hulk Hogan left TNA Impact Wrestling, you did an interview on a video show, and I don't remember what the name of the show was, and they were talking about Hulk's departure, and you were saying that TNA is going to be fine, and we talked a lot about your ups and downs with Impact Wrestling, or not your personal, but the company's ups and downs. I got to tell you, like I said, I've been a fan of this company since literally it started. For the first time in a while, maybe since Hulk left, I'm starting to feel like there's new breath here, new life here. I think there's a new direction. Do you guys in the locker room feel like there's an exciting, positive change?
Yeah, I mean, any change is always positive. Even if you think it's bad, you got to think it's positive because you got to give hope that something's going to change. But by me saying when Hulk Hogan's leaving, the company's going to be fine, by fine I mean we're still going to exist. We're still going to be in business, which it's 2017 and there's a lot of wrestling competition out there that's not easy to do, and we are. So I was right because we're still here.
Exactly.
We still exist, so we still are fine. But yeah, as far as a breath of fresh air, there is. Jeff Jarrett, he was there when TNA started. He helped start it. He has a great mind for wrestling. He knows talent. He knows what he's doing. He was a wrestler himself, so I have all the faith in the world in him. He's a great person. He's approachable. He wants to help everybody. So I personally am super excited for the changes. And then, of course, with Dutch Mantell, who's awesome, and, Scott DeBoer, everyone who's on board, it's going to be changes for the better.
Exactly. There's a lot of the old crew that made it work in the past that are back in the driver's seat. So we'll have to see how that works out for you guys. And like I said, I've been there from the beginning. I'm there now, and I'm pulling for you guys. So I wish you the best of luck, man.
Awesome, dude. I appreciate it.
All right. So before I let you go, I got one last favor to ask of you. Would you mind? I start every show by having the guest say, "This is so-and-so, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio." Would you mind giving us one of those?
You got it.
All right, I'll count you down in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Yo, what is up? This is Robbie E, and you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Boom!
This is the Monster Abyss, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
The gift of the gods champion, Sexy Star, defends that prestigious title against Johnny Mundo.
From Monterrey, Mexico, Sexy Star!
Sexy Star on Lucha Underground. New episode Wednesday at 8 p.m. on El Rey Network.
Sponsored by Cricket Wireless. Something to smile about.
This is TNA Impact Wrestling's Rockstar Spud, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
boy who was told he was going nowhere, crashing, clawing, rising, falling. Now he's a man, and he did what he said he would do. Rising, falling, never stop clawing. He saw it coming, even as a young boy, he saw it coming.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. We just finished up with our guest of the week. Well, I guess our second guest of the week. Our first guest of the week was Frankie Kazarian, and we didn't do a post-show on that one because we wanted to get that one up in time for the ROH pay-per-view, which aired last night. But this week,
actually, it's funny. This year marks the 15th anniversary for both Ring of Honor and TNA, which, I mean, say what you will about it as a company, and plenty of people have said both positive and negative things about both companies, but it's pretty amazing that they've lasted this long. I mean, they both outlived ECW at this point.
and WCW, really. I mean, depending on where you draw that line from when WCW became WCW, they lasted longer. Obviously, WCW had bigger audiences, but they've lasted longer than both of those timeline-wise, and that's saying something.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely something. I remember when Ring of Honor started, I, for whatever reason, was on the phone with Rob Feinstein, not for an interview. I just had him on the phone. I was calling about something. I think I wanted to know where my order was or something. And at the time, I thought, wow, he's a really nice guy. Now I kind of wonder what his intentions were. But he said, are you coming to the debut ROH show? And I said, no. And he said, why not? And I said, well, I'm in Arizona. He's like, I'll tell you what, you come all the way down here for this, and I'll get you front row seats and set you up and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, oh, he's a really nice guy. But, of course, I didn't go. But knowing what I know now, I'm kind of glad I didn't. But there you go.
What is Rob Feinstein up to these days?
Oh, he still does RF video and is doing well for himself. I mean, I have no... Yeah, a lot of people think I have a beef with Rob Feinstein because of that show we did, and I just posted it on Facebook, by the way. I just posted the Missy Hyatt and Gabe Sapolsky one where Missy basically just blasts him for 15 minutes straight. I just posted it on Facebook. People think I have a problem with Rob. I have no problem with Rob. Rob's a nice enough guy. I'll say now what actually impressed Eric, our old co-host, and ended up Eric becoming a big fan of the show, what I said then. And that is, nobody cared that he was gay. Big deal. Doesn't impact me at all. It was the fact he was trying to pick up a little guy, a kid, and knowingly didn't care that it was a kid. That's the creeptastic part of it. But anyway, we're way off topic already.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, the company, or not company, but the nonprofit that caught him, Perverted Justice, they were the ones that were tied in with Dateline NBC doing all those To Catch a Predator shows, which I think they started doing, like, a year or so after Feinstein got caught. It was right after that. So he could have ended up on TV if the timing had been different.
Could have destroyed him. Could have destroyed him. It didn't.
Yeah.
But it could have destroyed him. Probably should have destroyed him. But it didn't destroy him. All it did was really cost him ROH. He got out of that, and there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's owned by Sinclair, I think. Sinclair owns it?
Yeah.
And good for them. I mean, from what I understand, I have not watched it. I have it recorded to watch, and I will watch it later on. Pay-per-view last night, I've heard good things.
Cool.
There you go. So
I heard the Broken Hardys showed up, actually, and finally worked a match with the Young Bucks.
They did, and that was actually going to be leading us into our topic of the week. So last week's topic was the Montreal Screwjob. Was it or was it not a work? This week's topic, this one topic that we're going to do, is going to be, you ready? Does Reby Hardy have a point on her unhinged Twitter rants? So let's set the stage here for you.
Okay.
The Hardy Boys, from what we understand, were trying to work out a contract to stay with Impact Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds to me like maybe Jeff Jarrett's not a big fan of Raby, of the Hardys, or especially Matt. So maybe he wasn't trying as hard as he could have to keep him as part of the roster. All the while, Matt is grinning and bearing it and continuing to be the happy-go-lucky employee and try to stay. If you believe what Reby says, apparently the Hardys actually funded some of the shows that they ran, including the Total Nonstop Deletion episode.
I believe that.
Okay, that was before, I believe, the sale of the company officially. So that was it's entirely possible. So it sounds to me like there's avenues of this that I agree with her on. She does go a little bit far. I think she calls Jeff Jarrett a drunken hillbilly at one point, which I have no problem at all with Jeff Jarrett. In fact, I like Jeff Jarrett a heck of a lot.
We're very nice to Jeff Jarrett on this show. He's honestly, I think, as a talent, he's one of the more underrated talents in the last 30 years or so. I thought he was a fantastic talent. Has a good mind for wrestling, too.
Good mind for it. And for whatever reason, we all have our problems with people. There's people that I don't get along with that probably are nice people, but I don't get along with them. It sounds like there might just be a problem there. I don't know if this is true or not, but reading between the lines, it sounds to me like there's just some kind of a problem between Jeff and Matt. I don't know if it harkens back to when Matt was being called Fat Hardy at the time, and he had that rather lackluster match at a TNA pay-per-view. I think it was Slammiversary, actually, long before there was a Broken Hardys. You know what I mean? Long before that. But
who was he working with in that match? I don't really remember which one you're talking about.
If I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, I think it might have been an attempt to bring back Chris Harris as well, who was also, incidentally, overweight.
Was that the Beer Money match?
Might have been.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, when Jeff was there, I mean, the Hardys weren't at their best. Matt, like you said, was going through his Fat Hardy phase, and Jeff had just had that embarrassing incident in Victory Road. So, I don't know, maybe there's a part of Jeffrey feels like sooner or later the Hardys are going to fuck it up. I don't know. But if that was the mindset, so that's why he didn't try as hard to keep him. But anyway, go into your next point. What were you going to say?
I was basically going to say, but the fact is, and we all know that Reby doesn't have a filter, but oh my God. You read her posts, and I actually responded to one of them, and the last post of her first rant, she went on 2 rather epic rants, maybe another one since then, but the last post that she put out there was something along the lines of, and fuck that owl. Referring to, if you haven't seen it, and I don't know how you could have missed it, Anthem has added an owl, a rather large blue owl, to the TNA Impact Wrestling logo. And it doesn't sound like she likes the logo. But I will admit this openly, that I was reading that while drinking a bottle of, or a cup of soda. And I read that line, and I shot that right out of my nose. It was... That made me laugh.
Sounds like you should have married her. I don't know. Nothing against your wife, but I'm like, oh my God, I think I found your soulmate there.
Oh, I like her. She's nice. Yeah, she's a Giants fan too. That doesn't hurt.
She looks great in Giants gear. By the way, I've seen photo shoots. It was like very nice.
Yes, I posted one today where she's covered in Giants flags, and that's about it. There was another one I posted of her in an Eli Manning jersey and a thong, which was enjoyable to look at as well. But the point here, to getting back on topic, is, I think I'm going to preface this by saying this. I don't know, between our illustrious ex-co-host Nick Knoll and myself, I don't think there has ever been a show that's had more people defend Impact Wrestling in good times and bad as our show. And I happen to still be a fan. I watched the show on Thursday. I defend them. I think that they're still a necessary product, and I do see the Anthem guys taking over as a massive step in the right direction for the company, because the direction they were going in the last couple of years was not sustainable. They couldn't.
No, I mean, they'd gone to Destination America, then they'd lost that deal and gone to Pop TV. They'd lost, and this really all started with losing the Spike TV deal, and they've really been on a steady decline.
Since they lost Hogan, and it's since they lost Hogan, but it's more than just Hogan, way more than just Hogan. They lost AJ as well at the same time. It was really losing Dixie Carter's family's blessing. The purse strings were cut, therefore the money was cut, and it was felt, and it was obvious, and because of that, we had things like donations and funding by rock stars like Billy Corgan, who believed he was buying into the company, and then it turns out, sorry, that's not the case, and all these other things.
Yeah, that was weird. That whole situation was weird.
It was ugly. It was ugly, and it shouldn't have been public, but I'm glad it's over. I'm glad that's over. But to the point, here's the question of the week. Ready? I have a big graphic come up on the screen. Question of the week. Should Impact Wrestling have kept the Hardy Boys?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, I think if you're trying to rebrand Impact Wrestling, I keep calling them TNA, but if you're trying to revitalize the company, you gotta add a lot of new things. You gotta rebuild the roster, but you also gotta keep that. Or you got to look at what they were doing initially and go, all right, who are the guys that were really keeping the ship afloat while things were kind of looking bad? Like, who are the guys that people seem to like? EC3 is definitely one of those guys. I've been a huge supporter of EC3 for years now. When he first debuted with them, I was like, this guy is really, really good and could turn into something special, and he did.
He absolutely did. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think he's great. So a good move keeping him. Other names, just off the top of my head, you and I both like Eli Drake. I think he's a natural on the mic, and he's like kind of
the White Rock.
There's a lot of raw potential. What?
He's the White Rock.
In a lot of ways, yes, and there's a lot of raw potential there. Like, I could see him developing into something really good. So you got to look at those guys that were doing the best they could to keep the ship afloat, and when I think of those guys, like the top of the list would be the Broken Hardys. Yes, the stuff they were doing was crazy, but it was getting people talking about TNA again. When they did the final deletion, that generated a lot of buzz for them. And I think the ratings, granted, how high could the ratings possibly be on Pop TV? I don't know many people that even have it, but the ratings went up for that episode. And they were generating positive buzz, and it got to the point where the Hardys were doing, and this is where the real mistake was in losing them. They're going around to indie shows and having tag title matches with all these other tag teams around the country, which gives Impact footage that they don't have to film themselves. It could just be Matt and Jeff just doing it on their own budget, which I'm assuming that a lot of that stuff was just them. And it helps build relationships with other companies, which you could use to do talent exchanges and create fresh matches and do all sorts of other things. And it could have eventually led, because they were teasing a match between them and the Young Bucks, which ultimately happened at the Ring of Honor pay-per-view the other night. You could have potentially built a relationship with Ring of Honor and done talent exchanges and maybe an invasion angle or something like that, because that's really one thing that TNA needs to get back to doing, because they used to have a partnership with New Japan Pro Wrestling. They used to have a pretty good working relationship with them, and that went south. And now it's like they're kind of just standing off on an island. And, in this era where the WWE kind of has the monopoly on everything, there's got to be some level of these other companies kind of banding together a little bit. I'm not saying it has to be like the NWA, where everybody's just kind of under the same umbrella, but it could be like the old territory days, where it's like, I've heard stories of Vince McMahon Sr. just being like, oh, hey, I need a heel. Could you send me over this guy for a few weeks, and in exchange, I'll let you have Andre for 3 weeks, and you get some big houses from Andre. And that kind of relationship and doing stuff like that. And I think the Hardys were kind of doing this wacky gimmick, but also kind of creating potential working business relationships for TNA by doing that. And now that they're gone, that's all out the window at this point. They've kind of got to start from scratch.
I completely agree. They've completely managed to let's be honest. If you said TNA to a lot of people over the past year, people have been negative, very, very negative. In fact, they've had a negative opinion from anybody, and it does stem from, I'll be blunt, a undying, unwielding desire from the smart marks to defend WWE at all costs to the point of denigrating anything that's independent of WWE. And there is a level of that. I know that that's going to piss off some people.
It's weird. It's like they'll never, like, any wrestling fan will never completely give up on WWE, and that's just kind of it's like watching the Rankin Bass Christmas specials every Christmas. They just kind of mentally enslave themselves into doing it. And no matter how bad the WWE gets, there will always be that contingent that will watch it no matter what they do. But at the same time, they also love the Rebel Company, which nowadays would be something like Ring of Honor, that represents something new, exciting, and different. TNA was always kind of in the middle. It was never the WWE, so it doesn't get that kind of consideration. It was the company that was trying to be as big as the WWE. It never reached that level, but it was always above Ring of Honor, which was like the smart marquee favorite. So kind of like it almost felt like at times, no matter what TNA did, they were just going to get crapped on.
And that's still somewhat the case, and there's that level of that. But what I was going to say is, if you did find somebody who was going to be, or at least make the effort to not be a WWE sycophant, I hate the WWE, but I watch NXT, then you're a fucking asshole. Because that's still WWE, you schmuck you.
I mean, you're giving them money to watch it.
Exactly. Thank you. That's what I've always argued. It's like,
I mean, they're on the network, and I think you can watch it on Hulu, too, because they have a lot of WWE shows on Hulu. But it's still, like you said, it's the same thing.
It's a WWE product. And, you'll find even these internet journalists out there, if you read the house show results, they don't say WWE NXT house show results. They say NXT house show. It's not. It's an independent company. It's not. It is owned by WWE. It's a WWE product. You might not like that it is. You might want to feel smarter by pretending you watch something outside the WWE universe box, but you don't. You're still watching a WWE product. Anyway, back to my original point. The one thing they'll say is delete, 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 and all the other stuff that the Hardys were doing, and that is the one thing that has been working. I mean, we just had Eddie Edwards on the show recently, and I gave him a lot of credit for being the workhorse of the company, and that's true. Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards were kind of the workhorse during the downtime. Definitely, there's truth to that. But in terms of anything that reached out of the TNA faithful audience and into a more broad audience, it was the Hardys. They're the only ones who kind of broke the TNA bubble and reached out of it and kind of appealed to a wider audience than just the TNA crowd. And that losing that is a huge loss for TNA or Impact Wrestling or whatever you want to call them. I think they're going to be fine. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that losing them is going to kill them, but I think it would be a lot easier for them to continue and even grow that renegade feel if they had that Hardy character going out there and doing it, as opposed to going on it without it. I think that's definitely a loss.
Yeah, that's going to leave a huge hole in the show too. It's because they kind of became the show, so and they were enjoyable. They were kind of a. Yes, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards are great workers. Yes, EC3, I just sung his praises, but the Hardys were kind of the thing that was like, they almost felt like they existed in their own little world, and whenever they did a show centered around them, it felt like I was watching a completely different show, and it was exciting, it was different, and I was completely okay with that, and it was a lot more entertaining than, say, what they were doing when they were on Destination America, where the show was just so flat.
Oh, it was there's a couple episodes in there that were very funereal. It sounded like a funeral. The crowd is dead. The action, the guys are trying, but the crowd's dead. And that has to do with John Guberic. Not a fan. I'll be blunt. There was people in charge of that company at the time. I have no idea if he's still in charge in any capacity. But there was people in charge of that company at the time that shouldn't have been in charge. And if you look at the structure of the company now, it's completely changed. There's more people in charge that know what they're doing. You got Dutch Mantell and Bruce Pritchard and Jeff Jarrett. Those are three just incredibly gifted minds for professional wrestling, and they're going to help out. Last week's guest was Abyss. I mean, you could say what you want about Abyss, depending on how he looks. You know what I mean? He doesn't look like he would be the this incredibly knowledgeable guy, but if you talk to him for even 5 minutes, and we talked to him for about 15, you can tell he is. He is. He's very intelligent. He knows exactly what he's talking about. He knows the rest of the
lawyer.
business. Yeah. Yep. From I forget what I can't remember the name of the book. Park and Park. There you go. From Park and Park. There you go. Oh man. So yeah, long story short, there's people in there that are in charge now. Madison Rain, by the way, is apparently one of the bookers for the Knockouts division, and she actually.
Is that still the case?
I think so. I don't know if that's like going forward, but I know that she's the one who put together the wedding that happened a few weeks ago on television.
Which, to be perfectly honest, came off. It was bonkers, but it actually came off fairly well.
That was very well done. I thought that was one of the better things that they've done, sans the Hardys, in a while. So that was a really well done thing. Wrestling weddings can turn off pretty bad. So they're either really bad or really good. Like yeah.
Or sometimes you get some like the Kane and Lita wedding, which was so bad it was hilarious, and I loved every second of it. So it really, I don't know, weddings in wrestling are kind of weird in that regard, but you never know exactly how it's going to turn out.
Well, there was a good one with the Kane and Lita one was a good one. That was so bad it was funny.
Yeah.
Let's see, what was the other one that was good? There was the Billy and Chuck one, which was atrocious.
Which one?
Billy and Chuck.
Oh, that was terrible. That was. Oh my God, that was such. Okay, number one, it was a cheap ploy for attention, and then they chickened out at the end. So it was like, okay, so the whole thing was just a waste of time.
Yep. And what was
like they did it for attention, then they like didn't even follow through on it. It's like, oh fuck you.
It was not storyline wise, the Macho Man and Elizabeth one, especially if you know that they actually were like doing that angle of getting married finally, while actually getting ready to get divorced, literally. It came off incredibly well. That was one of the better ones. And
were they going through the marital problems at that point?
Yes, absolutely they were.
I mean, aside from the typical, like, they always had marital problems, but...
No, that's when the stuff was hitting the fan, absolutely.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's part of, and that speaks to the professionalism of both, that they were able to,
You never would have guessed it.
Yeah, they both...
I guess it's like Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, because apparently... when they were going through their issues back when filming, like, I Love Lucy and the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour, apparently the tension on set was so thick you could cut it with a knife. But you watch the shows, you'd never think it.
No, and, we reference a lot of old shows on this show. I don't know how many people out there watch them, but we sure did.
Hey, look, Nick at Night used to be great. I'm just saying.
Yes, it did. Yeah, Nick at Night was great. I remember vividly watching Nick at Night with my mother, on Friday night. I Love Lucy, followed by either the Lucy Show or Here's Lucy or the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour. Then you had Taxi.
Oh my God, that show was so good.
That show was so good. Absolutely. So
Mary Tyler Moore show. And that's the other thing about Nick at Night. I'm sorry, we're getting off track here, but when we watched it, it was a whole lineup of shows. Like, you get, 8 to 10 shows a night. Now, whenever I watch it, it's Friends, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and maybe one other show. And
George Lopez is one that they love. And maybe at the very beginning, they might show Full House. But that's it.
Yeah. That's not even, because the old Nick at Night used to have shows that I didn't like, but there were also 8 or 9 of them, so I didn't care.
Right. Well, I remember even as recently as 2004 and 2005, there was Cheers, which is, they ran hot and cold, but for the most part, the show was awesome.
I love Cheers. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a couple Duff years there, or a couple Duff episodes, but for the most part, it was one of the greatest shows. And if you stayed up late, you had other shows that were maybe not as popular. You had Wings, which is my personal favorite show of all time, that and Perfect Strangers, which also was on, if you stayed up late enough, on Nick at Night. Head of the Class was on.
Okay, I watched Perfect Strangers. I never watched Wings. I have a question about it, though. It was one of those shows, you mentioned it was underrated. It was one of those shows that actually had a reputation for being a really bad show that somehow stayed on the air for much longer than it should have. I've never heard anybody say that show's one of their favorites.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so what makes it so great? I'm just curious. I've never watched the show, so I don't know.
It's the well, I mean, it was somewhere between Taxi and Seinfeld.
Okay.
Somewhere between Taxi and Seinfeld in the way that it was shot. It was of the era. It was done by the same people who did Cheers, so to put it in perspective, and it was on the same network, which was NBC. The setup was very similar to Taxi in that instead of it being a taxi, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, a garage maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, it was in an airplane hangar. Same kind of principle, though. You had the bad guy boss. You had the little airline that was against it, and you had the sassy and funny person that was behind the counter, and the characters all had depth, and they all had their own personalities, their own styles, and I mean, realistically, it was a very, very well-written show, and each character had its own definitions. So it was really a good show, and it lasted a long time. Again, much like other shows, it had a couple episodes where you go, maybe that.
Well, every show has that.
Yeah, but for the most part, it was. I mean, there's stuff I quote almost daily that comes from a Wings episode.
Okay, that's cool. Again, I do know that Amy Yazbek was in it. She was in the
later episode.
Yeah, she was in. I was a big Mel Brooks fan, so I know she was in like Robin Hood Men in Tights and Dracula Dead and Loving It.
And so was Steven Weber, who was the one.
Yeah.
There you go, and he was Brian on that show. So they were on Wings at the same time that was done. They were kind of having an on again, off again fling. So it was kind of cool to see them outside of that. She was married to John Ritter, who also appeared on Wings a couple of times. So,
and they starred together in Problem Child. Everything connects.
And they did, and they also were on an episode of The Cosby Show. So there you go. As husband and wife before they were husband and wife.
How we connect together?
There you go. It's like the what is it, 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon here.
Yeah.
But no, that was definitely one of my favorite shows. And actually, I was surprised. I actually quoted it. And I'll tell you why, too. I don't care. If anybody's listening, I'll laugh at it. They'll probably hate me for saying so. But Tim Daly came out because Trump suggested that he was going to cut some of the funding for the arts to pay for some of the other things that need to be done. And Tim Daly came out and said, oh, you can't cut the arts. What about all the young actors that need that money for this, that, and the other thing? And then he proceeded to go skiing and break both his legs. Almost instantly thereafter, and I said, no, I did not Tanya Harding him for bad-mouthing Donald Trump, and I made a joke, and I called him Joey Bear, and I was surprised that a few, not just one, but a few of my wrestling friends being shocked that I quoted that show and saying it's one of their favorites, too. So maybe there's, as much as like The Walking Dead is for wrestling dorks now, maybe Wings was like that show for the wrestling dorks back then. I don't know, but
maybe.
There you go. But they were shocked that I referenced it, and they were laughing. They thought my quote was funny. So there you go.
Yeah. You mentioned The Walking Dead. That show has really come off the rails. It is really disappointing because they added a new cast member that I really like, and I thought he was exactly what the show needed, but they haven't done anything with it. It's like, okay, the show's just boring now.
All right, let me be blunt, okay? Here's where I piss more people off.
Oh, go for it.
Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, Downtown Abbey, or whatever the hell it is, all these shows that everybody tells me I should watch, never seen once, and not looking forward to doing so.
Yeah, I love Game of Thrones. I don't think you'd like it because you're not into like the Lord of the Rings type of stuff.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so you wouldn't. It's Lord of the Rings with tits and cursing, so and politics. I mean, that's pretty much what it is, and I love it. It's great, but I don't think you'd like it.
It's not for me. A lot of people have told me I should watch it. It's not for me. Anyway, long story short, the interview this week was Robbie E. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. We also had on Frankie Kazarian. Last week we had on Abyss. Yep. Last week we had on Abyss and Paul Burchill. So we've had some pretty big names here in a span of 2 weeks, and we did 2 a week. Don't get excited, everybody. I can't promise that I'm going to be able to do that every week, but I really enjoyed the run here, and I'm hoping to keep going with it, at least to some extent. And we have an interview with Vampiro coming up soon, apparently, so that'll be good.
Oh, Vamp! I've got a renewed interest in him after his time on Lucha.
Absolutely, so that would be very good. And have you ever seen Wrestling Society X?
I have not. People have told me it was kind of the precursor to Lucha Underground. Is that accurate?
Exactly, yeah. It was, and we had on Kevin Kloss. I don't know if you remember him, the announcer who was with XPW, who was the announcer for Wrestling Society X. I think we had him on around the time. I think it was just after Wrestling Society X had bit the dust. He was. I like him. Don't get me wrong. I like him. He's a nice guy, but I don't think he was a benefit for the show. I think he was trying too hard to sell every single thing. And one of our announcers that we had on the show in the past said basically, if everything's a high spot, then nothing's a high spot.
Yeah.
You know, if you're excited about everything, then the audience at home doesn't know what to actually be excited about. And he was kind of like, and a drop kick! And it's like, all right, it's a drop kick. Cool. Yeah, it was a nice move, but that's not the finish. Don't sell it like it's a finish. And
that's where JR did it better than everybody.
JR is still, Caroline's not going to like this. She just walked in the room. I watched a little bit of New Japan on Access TV yesterday, and the 12-year-old boy in me, hearing Jim Ross call just simple wrestling moves instead of telling horrible stories like he did for the last several years of his WWE run, was excited because he was.
Oh, so he's still good. That's good to hear.
At just calling the moves, yes, and trying to tell horrible stories that really suck. It was time for him to go.
Well, I mean, anybody think that's it? And that was the thing. I could tell that JR was bored at the booth. Like, and that was the other thing. Is like you could tell when he wasn't interested.
Yeah, well, it was a horrible time for this company, and you know, he was trying to literally trying to shine shit, or
yeah,
you know,
actually for a brief period, and I hate to say this, it was right after King had his heart attack. For a brief period, you had him and JBL at the booth together. And Michael Cole was there too, and I was like, can we just drop Cole and have JBL and JR? I think that might work. And of course, JBL got much worse as an announcer. But at the time, I was like excited at the possibility. Can we just get JR and JBL at the booth? I'd be down for that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, JBL was good for a time, but then he got bored too, and I think that reflects in his performance. More of a company guy now. More of a company guy, not as much.
Ball game, Michael.
What's that?
Ball game, Michael.
Yeah, that
JBL says that every time.
Yeah, there's not a lot of I don't know, passion there anymore. Anyway, long story short, hope everybody enjoyed the interviews, and check out WrestlingEpicenter.com for updates on upcoming shows. Check out the archives. Check out the store and buy something. And hey, Pat, I really appreciate you taking the time and being part of this here tonight.
Oh, I was happy to do it, sir. Not a problem.
Sir? Okay. By the way,
it's weird. It's like on this show, you are kind of my boss, but you don't sign my checks. So.
No, I don't. Well, early happy birthday to you as well. It's coming up next week.
Oh, yes. Next Monday. Not this Monday, but the one following. Yeah, it'll be. I turned 32. I feel old.
There you go.
You first met me, it was 2005, I believe. And we were, like, I was still in college at that point.
So was I.
I am still goddamn old. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
We've come a long way.
Yeah.
This is Vince Russo, and you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Enjoying what you're hearing? Be sure and check out WrestlingEpicenter.com on social media at Facebook.com/WrestlingEpicenter, on Twitter at James Epicenter, and of course, WrestlingEpicenter.com for 24-hour news updates, our interview archives, and all the other information you've come to expect from the Wrestling Epicenter.